Hello, Pete, Carl, or Brian, whoever's watching this. Probably just Pete, maybe Carl as well. I doubt Brian's going to watch it, but maybe he will. Anyway, welcome to my Unit 11 presentation on Qlab. I'm Callum Adams, maybe Callum Smith for the examiners, not 100% sure. For this instance, it's going to be Callum Adams. So, I'm going to be doing my presentation today on Qlab. It is a free industry standard software created by Figure 53 for queue-based playback. It only runs on Mac OS 10.10 or later and is an industry standard for theatres. I know my local theatres use it. That's the South End theatres in the South End area. That's the Clis Pavilion Palace Theatre. They use it for sound. I haven't seen them use it for lighting or AV, but I know they use it for sound. I know they have the licenses for everything, because what theatre wouldn't? But yeah, it only runs on Apple Mac products, and you will find it in all, if not most, professional theatre venues and environments. Its main use is for sound design and queue-based playback, but it can also be used for AV and lighting, as I've said. That's things like running video, pictures, text queues. You can also use it to trigger lights, so you can patch inside of Qlab, or if you're really feeling up to it, I think you can use MIDI to control another desk. I'm going to look into that because I know that at South Essex we have a Grand MA, and I want to see if I can use Qlab to trigger queues on that. That would be interesting. I don't know anything about lights, so it's going to be a lot of research and a lot of trial and error. Qlab is free. I say that in quotation marks. Although it's free, it does have 3 licenses, or 4 if you include the free one. It has a free license, which is really quite good for sound, but really quite dull for everything else. You'll struggle to run AV and lighting on it. But sound you can run perfectly fine as long as it's a small, simple show, nothing exotic with surround sound or microphone cues. You can play back audio, fade audio. But yeah, more into what the licenses are and how much they are later on. This here is the Qlab Interface. It's really quite simple once you get to know it. Don't be intimidated by it. I'm going to talk you through everything there is to know about it. So if we just make that picture bigger, right here, as you can see, we have the big go button. You press that, you start queue, or whatever queue selected. Next to that, you have the title and note section. So the title would be something like gunshot, if you're doing a sound cue, for example. And the note, you can put anything you want in there. You can write this is a gunshot from an AK-47. Don't know, a Glock 19, maybe, not sure. Or you can write the visual cue for it. So you can write, what can I say? Bob walks on the stage, holds a gun, points the gun at target, and flicks gun upwards. When he flicks the gun upwards, you fire. That cue, obviously. It's really quite cool. You can do many things with Qlab. So next to that, we have the rewind cue, the rewind button, the pause button, the play button, and the stop button. They are for controlling the active queue at that time, or the selected queue, whatever one. Now, underneath the go button, the title and the description, you have your main bank of queues. These are where you'd select what queue you want to run. I'm going to go into them later, but in there you'll find things like group queues, fade queues, audio queues, mic queues, video queues, lighting queues. Even things like stop, start, arm, disarm, wait, comment queue. That's quite a helpful one, especially if you're into organising everything like I am. You've also got things like Apple scripting. I've never used it before. I don't know what I'd use it for particularly. But yep, you can Apple script. I know that I've watched a YouTube video on it, and he has it so every time you open up an interface on Qlab, so if his Qlab fails mid-show and he has to go to his backup one, he can restart the main one, and once it's restarted, it'll come up with a dialog box saying Qlab is back, or something like that. helpful. Don't know why I'd ever use it, but he found a use for it. Under that you have your main bank of queues. These are all the queues within the show that you are currently running. So they could be anything from the box above it: video, audio, lighting, fade queues, mic queues, anything like that. You can color code them to organize them. You can put them in groups. You can make them jump around. So you could have it go to another queue and then come back. You could have it auto follow, so once the queue's finished it goes to the next one automatically. All helpful things, more on that later on, maybe in a different video. Underneath all of that you have your edit window. This is for the current queue you have selected. So in this particular picture, as you can see, we have a text queue highlighted. So this is the edit window for a text queue. You have the basics window here. This is very similar for all of the queues, I'm pretty sure. So you have the queue number, so Q1 for example. You then have the duration that queue is, the pre-wait and the post-wait. You also have whether it continues, so auto continue, auto fades. You have the name of the queue and the all glorious description box of that queue. You also have what that targets. So if this was a fade queue, for example, it would target an audio queue above it or below it, wherever. And that just changes the level of it. You have whether it's flagged, auto loads, whether it's armed or not. If it's not armed, it won't play. You then have things like triggers. What will trigger that queue? So you can actually set it so if you have a gunshot, you can trigger every time you press the button 9 on your keyboard. So every time you press the button 9 on your keyboard, it will play that sound effect. You can, in this particular one, you can have display and geometry. This is how you manipulate how the text will appear on the screen. You also will have what will be written, because this is a text queue. You'd have what will be written on the screen in front of you, and then you have effects, so things like crop, stuff like that, video effects, color correction. Obviously you wouldn't really use it in text, I don't believe, but in maybe if it's a picture you could have it warp, I don't know, you could do all sorts of funny things with it. If we have before we actually move on, the bar on the side shows you the queue lists and carts. I don't particularly know what a queue cart is. I think they're like buttons, so you press it like how'd I put this? Like a quick queue button, you'd press it and it'd play it, and you'd press it and you'd play it. Sort of like a launch pad would with sound effects. But then you'd have all your queue lists as well. So if you had different scenes within the show, you could put them all in there, particularly if it's a long show like a pantomime. Now, next, here we have another Qlab window. This looks like it's for Hamlet. I know that because it says it in the top corner, but it looks interesting. It's welcome to Qlab 4. So as you can see, this is a very similar window, except this one's in show mode. So the last one we had was in edit mode. Let me go back to it for you. This one here is in edit mode. As you can see, it has the edit bar here, where this one here is in show mode, which means you cannot edit the actual queue at the bottom. So this will stop you doing stupid things like changing the auto follow on and auto wait and stuff like that, all by accident. Say if you accidentally nudge your mouse and it clicks and you don't realise, but you've actually clicked the where it auto follows or auto continues, that could ruin your show. So this is an easy way just to simply run the queues in order. This particular show contains group queues, light queues, audio queues, video queues, fade queues. It also uses things like colours for organising things along with groups. Although groups can also run different things. More on that in possibly a future video or a text thing. I've only learnt this recently. I need to research it more. But this one also multitasks. It runs multiple queues at once. Instead of it all running stop, start, so you have this sound and then this sound and then this sound, it runs multiple sounds at once. This means you could have something like a wind sound effect going, and then during that wind sound effect you have a gun go off, and then maybe you fade the wind. I know that I've used this before. I did a Aesop's Fable show last year, and we had a wind blow. He was trying to prove something, so he was blowing harder and harder. So I would do it, and every time the narrator said blow, I'd increase the volume. So every time he said blow, I'd hit space, and it'd fade up the volume, and then it'd fade up the volume, all until he fell on the floor, and I would just play a massive cut, that sound effect, and then a bonk on the floor. Really cool, really helpful. This one doesn't use things like auto follows or auto continues, but they're quite simple to use and quite easy to integrate. And it doesn't use weights that I can see here. Maybe it does later on in the show. I know Hamlet's quite a big show. For example, there are 50 cues here. But yes. Now, just a quick sort of summary of the free and audio license. Audio is where I mainly lie. I could put video and lighting, but to be honest, I didn't have enough size in my PowerPoint. So I don't know if you just want to pause and have a look, if you're interested. But things between free and licensed, as you can see, if you license it, you get a lot more features, but it is expensive. Especially if you're not doing shows all the time. If you're not a theatre and you've not got shows coming in every single day, then I don't see much point in getting a license, whereas if I'm just a student, it's quite easy for me to just run a simple show with a free license and just go for it. I've already spent just under £1,000 on a MacBook. Why would I want to spend just under £1,000 on Qlab as well? That's my mind. But yeah, not everyone has a lot of money, so it's a good thing people make free software. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope I've been of information, and I hope you've enjoyed watching it. Thank you very much.